Welcome back to the Little Scoop podcast. We're joined this week by Lisa Messina, founder of the Messina movement. We talked to her about her previous career as a dancer and musical theater performer who found her way into somatic healing after her body basically told her to follow this path. She fainted trying to say no to a therapy training session. More on that later. Since visiting the county with her boyfriend, now husband, on one of their first dates, to moving here and converting an old house into their stunning living space, retreat center, and home of the process, you can see and feel that she is invested and intentional in everything she does. This is a beautiful discussion that highlights vulnerability and connection, and it's a reminder that sometimes our path will make itself known. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Little Scoop podcast. We're here with Lisa Messina. We're so honored to have you on our podcast. It means so much to us.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
And thank you for sharing your home and letting us actually record here today.
It's a real pleasure to have you guys here. And as you know, I've given them a tour. A lot of the work happens, or a lot of the in-person work happens in the studio space in the house. So it feels really fitting to have you guys in the space.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. We're going to try and just replicate all of this in our houses.
Yeah, actually.
It might take us about 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, but we'll get there.
We'll get there eventually.
Oh.
A little bit of background too. I feel like it's been, something that the stars have aligned to help us meet in this way too, because we actually kind of know of each other. Because my therapist, who's been with me for like almost 5 years now, Lisa, also Lisa.
Lisa M as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big
Lisa. I'm little Lisa. We're the Lisas.
Cute. Yeah, and she is your best friend. One of your best
One
friends.
of my best friends, yeah. Quite close. We've done a lot of our somatic relational training together. We had a very rare, beautiful, and unique experience in how we train and who we trained with. But anybody who I shared that container space with, the colleagues that I moved through that program with, are really all like brothers and sisters, and we've seen each other through it all. So, and to have Lisa, who was already a friend, from the both of us teaching at our yoga studio, Octopus Garden in Toronto for many, many years. So we already had a friendship, then worked together at this holistic clinic, and then went into the training together. So anyway,
It's awesome. And I mean, you've done so much, you've built so much, the Messina movement, the process, all of this we want to get into, but maybe you can take us through a little bit of a background as to how you got into somatic work. I know you have a background in musical theater. You're just touching on that. So tell us, dance has obviously been a big part of your life, movement, but what inspired you to go into somatic healing?
Yeah, I always say fell into somatic healing, but things are always there on the path for you to discover that are meant for you. So I know it was meant for me, but I wasn't seeking somatic healing at all, or somatic relational psychotherapy was the program that I wound it up in. And I say wound it up because I'll tell you the story. But I started off as a dancer very young. I was beating down the doors of the dance studio. My sister was dancing. I was 2.5 years old. They didn't let kids in until 3 or 4, and then I just got to go in, diapers on, in the ballet studio. So I've been moving, and movement training has been a part of my life since a very young age. I definitely focused on my dance more than anything else growing up. Was a competitive dancer, and then moved into musical theater, so singing, dancing, acting. And then I experienced a whole bunch of injury, illness, and I would say unprocessed stress, probably unprocessed trauma. Well, I know now it's unprocessed trauma that was trying to surface in my body under, within a career where the stress was high, the pressure was a lot, and to perform at that level. And I was fortunate enough to have a lot of gigs and be a part of many productions. So I was going. And I think my body just caught up to me, just saying hello, I'm over here.
We need some attention.
Exactly. So that came out, yeah, totally. So it came out in a recurring injury, digestive issues, and then just relational issues, especially when it came to romantic relationships. I was just always hitting the same roadblock. And that was causing me a whole bunch of other stress because, of course, I wanted to be in a romantic relationship that was fulfilling and satisfying. And I just would go all in and then kind of feel like I wasn't fulfilled and worse off feeling like the snags in relationships, and I couldn't figure it out. So all that to say, the injury and illness led me down the path of healing, really trying to figure out how I can get better physically, and then more like on a biological level when it came to my digestive system. And so yoga was my doorway in, and yoga and Pilates kind of happened simultaneously for me. Pilates, I was training with a Pilates teacher that was helping me with my injury, who was brilliant, Miriam Graff. I feel like I owe her my part of my life. She helped me heal from my physical injury. And then yoga was more of a lifestyle, and I felt like there was a lot more nervous system healing and breathing and mindfulness that was a part of yoga that wasn't a part of Pilates. So that helped me with other lifestyle changes. So I decided to leave musical theater and really study yoga, become a yoga teacher. I was at the same time training to be a Pilates instructor. I went to India. I got my first yoga certification in an ashram in India. I went pretty deep into my training, continued to train in both Pilates and yoga, became a teacher trainer myself, delivered many workshops and courses in that realm. 2 clinical directors of a new mental health and addictions clinic that was opening in Toronto wound up in my class. And this clinic it had a holistic model in that there was the whole holistic side of the clinic and then the clinical therapist side. So they recruited me from that class saying, like, you have to come and work with us and be a part of our holistic team. And I had never done any therapy in my life at that point. I had done so much healing in so many different realms, but nothing that was like clinical psychotherapy. I joined the team. I thought it was a beautiful model. I got to learn more about that practice. They invited, those directors invited me to join their training. The workers, practitioners at this clinic were invited to train with their teachers from California. Those directors were from California. That's a longer story. So they wanted us to train with their teachers because they had these incredible somatic relational psychotherapy teachers that had this incredible program, and they just thought we would all benefit from learning from them. I actually fainted when I was asked to join the program. Oh, wow. Funny but not funny, because I was trying to say no. I think I was just overwhelmed by the idea of going into therapy, especially in a group setting with my colleagues. That definitely wasn't why on the surface I was saying no. I thought it was more like I didn't have the time or the money. I had a lot of excuses for why I wouldn't be joining the program. And I fainted. I literally blacked out.
That's your body doing it. Yeah.
So like, nice. I mean, now I look back and I'm like, well, something bigger than me got in the way of me saying no.
Yes.
And when I came to, I said, well, I guess I'm in. And I was terrified because I guess a part of me knew there was a whole world of unprocessed stuff down there, even though I didn't know it on the surface. I think my body knew. Anyway, guys, I could go on and on, but I'll just stop.
No, it's so good though. And I feel like it's a newer concept for people to listen to those cues from our bodies and to understand them on a deep level. And when you're sitting in a group and someone asks you a question and your heart starts racing, it's like, is it racing because you're nervous to share and what you're sharing is impactful? Or is it like, are we convincing ourselves that, no, I'm scared, so I shouldn't talk? It's really trying to understand what our body is trying to tell us. And so many people on the surface, they really don't know. And they're too maybe distracted and busy to really deep dive and figure out what it is. So I think that your story and just the fact that your body was like, didn't let you say no. Yeah. I think that's so incredible that it opened up a door in a way for you to actually go down that path. And so that's really neat.
I'm forever grateful, really, for that moment.
How was the group therapy? Because in the Messina movement, like what you've created, you do a lot of group work as well.
Yes, it's a big reason for why I created the process. Doing the work, it's relational work, right? One of the phrases that I always remember is our trauma happens in relationship, and then therefore so does our healing. And so a lot of the practices, as I was mentioning in the yoga practice and the Pilates practice and everything else I was doing, didn't really have any in real time learning or teaching that had anything to do with how I was relating to others or relationships in general. And those practices, at least at the time I was studying them, we didn't really go back into our developmental years and what those relationship blueprints were like. and how those relationship blueprints or templates would likely be kind of our roadmap for how we
foundation
exactly
really,
for how we show up in the world. And so without having unpacked any of that information, I wasn't feeling any progress or shifts in that one avenue, which we're relational beings. And the most important thing, as you were mentioning, is why you created this podcast earlier when we were chatting, is connection. Well, one thing I was thinking about is that we're not accustomed or well practiced in allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with others. And so when we're put on the spot like that, let's say, and we're supposed to be sharing from the inside, what like the depths of our souls and our beings with others, oftentimes it's nerve-wracking. How do we come out of that is we have to practice. We have to practice that, practice a skill, have experiences where it is safe to share ourselves with others. And part of that beating heart is because a part of our systems know that we weren't welcomed before. There were moments in our lives where when we were vulnerable, many, many moments in our lives where we showed up vulnerably and got hurt, got missed, unmet, maybe not heard. And so that all leads to
that blueprint you talked about.
And degrees of suffering that we could name forever.
Ask you a quick question. Share one part of it, because for me, creating this, being vulnerable, like Leah and I are sharing a part of ourselves with the community. I think Leah is better at doing this than I am, but being vulnerable is scary. Like there's part of it that when we put out like our little tiny creation into the little community that we've established, it still is scary. And so being vulnerable in that area, even if you build up resiliency and you build up the skills to be able to handle it, there is still, I think, instinctively a part of our being that is like, be careful.
Exactly. We want to belong. We want to preserve connection. Gabor Mate, amazing therapist, leader in the field of trauma healing, would always say that there's the kind of relationship between authenticity and connection that we can almost put verses in between. So it's like, to preserve connection, we had to sacrifice our authenticity, or we're showing up really authentically and then we break connection. So the balance between being able to feel like I can show up as my authentic self and keep connection is part of what is so healing for us, and we want to have more and more experience of that. So we do have to put ourselves out there like you guys are so beautifully doing, and sharing ourselves with the world, but again, incrementally. And like you said, something very important that you said that I want to highlight is to build those resources and skills to be able to cultivate your own inner sense of safety, right? When you can rely on an inner sense of safety, then that reliance on that external connection is a little less. Not that you don't need it, but that you can find it elsewhere and especially rely on it.
Can I ask you a very personal question though?
Absolutely.
Like, given that your body reacted when you fainted in that moment, how did you deal with feeling and being vulnerable?
So I'm actually working on our current newsletter series, so I feel like it's right on the tip of my tongue. I remember being in that first circle, and as excited as I was to learn, I was also like, just wanted to get the hell out of it. I just want to jump out of my skin. I remember looking outside the window, and it was a beautiful sunny day in Toronto, and I was just like, what am I doing here for 3 days, 8 hours a day? And this is the first weekend of years of weekends to come. And I remember checking in. We would do a check-in at the beginning too, and the process I teach people the check-in. And so the check-in we came around. You're supposed to talk about what you're noticing, what you're feeling, and be really authentic about it. And I just had my arms crossed, and I think I was all like tight and contained, and just sort of like, we're all fine. Like, we have homes, and we walk among the privileged people of having food available to us. And why do we have to be in here talking about our wounds and our traumas? We're amongst the people who are pretty fortunate. My teachers, I'll never forget, they were just like so loving, so welcoming, and just like really accepting of my check-in. And I'm sure at the time, looking back, they were probably just like, this girl is full of resistance. She's just they could probably see and feel my fear. When I was just convinced that was my stance. My projector was really on that day, and they just loved and accepted me as I was. So yes, I was completely closed and unwilling to participate. People, when they hear this story, I've gotten people responding to my newsletter these days going like, I would never have thought that of you. And I'm like, well, this is like 10 years ago. And I'll never forget the moment something woke up inside of me through witnessing a colleague of mine's process, which again is why I'm so such a cheerleader for group work, because I don't know that I would have had that feeling inside of me if I didn't witness it outside of me. And so I remember the moment where I could feel like, oh, something's there that needs out, or needs at least to be noticed and acknowledged. And that was the beginning of my first somatic process.
That's amazing. So can you also tell us about building the process and like how coming from that and your teachings and learning so much, like shifting that to actually founding your own, I'm going to call it an empire.
Oh, my goodness.
So founding your own empire and creating your own process and system for teaching and helping to heal others.
Yeah, we all have our own unique things that we can bring to experiences. And for me, I had this whole world of yoga and Pilates training, all this exercise science information I'd gone on to study with my favorite yoga teacher, who was a biomechanist, and had all this body knowledge that even though we're in somatic therapy training, which maybe some people don't even know what that is.
That's what somatic therapy training is.
In somatic therapy, we are working with the whole being, including the body, the nervous system. So unlike talk therapy, and a lot of talk therapy is shifting into that, including somatic work, but we actually honor the body and feeling and give space for the actual experience of our feelings and emotions before and more than staying in the story and the talking part. We do talk, of course. We have to understand things and make sense of them. That's a very important part of any process. But there's a lot of space around, as you mentioned, resourcing practices that help us to track and notice what is going on inside our bodies, to create space for those experiences, to actually get to experience things that want to be experienced in our bodies, to express ourselves in safe ways, and then to this term discharge. It's like basically what people would call release, like to be able to bring the nervous system back into regulation. And sometimes that doesn't really have to do much about the story, because trauma, or also that word can be really big for people. So sometimes I just say unprocessed stress. When it's in the body, it needs to be processed. So the more we contain it, the bigger it is. It's like we've heard, what we suppress, it creates more injury for us. That contraction around something creates more suffering. So what we resist persists. I thought, wow, these programs that I was in, I noticed that there wasn't a component of actually practicing to get into your body in a physical way. There was more, breathing and feeling into your body, but we didn't have any somatic practices that were more like somatic exercise-based practices. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is where I can absolutely add, even though I'm studying this other realm, here's something that comes from my background that I can put here. And I think it's absolutely fitting for people who aren't in touch with their bodies. Having slow, mindful, I like to say, like, mindful is only one part, right? Heartful, bodyful, whatever you want to call it, right? Like having practices that, bring us into a relationship with our bodies before not even before, it's not linear, right? But
To prep you for
exactly,
all
as a part of your somatic therapy or any kind of therapy, right? So when I design the process, it's very much, also a movement practice is in there. And that's stuff that you do on your own throughout the week. We meet as a group for 2 hours once a week for 8 weeks. And then I meet with everyone privately twice during that 8-week period, so that there's some one-on-one time, there's some group time. And then you've got this do-it-yourself practice library. And the do-it-yourself practice library has very specific body-based practices, meditations that are very somatic, embodied kinds of meditations, all guided by me and recorded, pre-recorded. And you get that for life. That's a library of practices and tools you get for life. And then when we meet once a week, we're going through that tenet of that particular week's practice. So at home, you're doing journal questions. You're including practices, let's say, to create resources, to learn to regulate your nervous system, to learn to give your emotions space, to do some exercises on understanding and weaving in the, where did I learn this and all the rest of it. But then also to give yourself those new experiences that are so important to live the life that you're meant to live, that you're always meant to live, outside of what happened to you, beyond that. So it takes us through the whole, what I call is the roadmap to embodied healing, for myself to even be facilitating, to have some structure for people. And I find people really love structure. Now, of course, structure is always meant to be disorganized and played inside, because we're not, we don't want to be too rigid about our healing. But I did create something that I think helps people go, okay, am I looking at all of these various aspects on my healing journey? Because if we miss one, or, we meditate, but we're using meditation to calm our systems, or then not looking at what's underneath of that, or we're doing movement practices, but, so we feel good in our bodies, but then we keep bumping up, like I did, in relationships issues. So it's just kind of like this whole embodied healing system that includes everything that I've learned to date.
So cool. Such a beautiful combination of so many different practices that I feel like it takes someone really special to be able to take aspects from all of it and build something beautiful and new.
Thank you.
So your journey, because you started in Toronto, did you actually start the process and building your brand in Toronto?
That's a great question. When did I start the process? No, would have been here, because I was still very much facilitating under the umbrella of my second teachers, and they had their own programs at the time. And so I was a facilitator of their group program, and it was a beautiful program. Part of what has inspired me from my first training, my second training, and everything else other than those two trainings that wove into the process. But no, I was facilitating through that organization for many years. When I left that organization and started my own private practice, that's when I was starting to create my own group program.
And so what actually brought you to the county? Because it sounds like you had a really great thing going in Toronto, but obviously you had this desire to build something of your own. And let us know a little bit about how you ended up here.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my husband's father was born in Trenton. So Adam's family had been coming to visit the county since he was in diapers. When I was in Toronto, my roommate, another Adam, which gets confusing, Adam Bolton, who runs Adam Angeline's, he actually moved to the county. So now I had my roommate of several years. We were actually in musical theater college together, and in the county. And I was starting to date Adam, my husband now currently, and he brought me on a date here. One of our very first dates early on was at Sandbanks, and he packed a picnic, and it was such a beautiful date. And I just was like, where am I? And I said, oh, my friend lives here now. And anyway, we had this great date. And then, of course, my roommate was coming back and forth so often because he had met Alex, his current partner. And so I always wanted to run a retreat center. That was really what it was all about. So I had been facilitating many retreats, some in India, Guatemala, Costa Rica. Like, I was hosting these retreats, and I just thought, some in Ontario. And I was just never satisfied with Ontario retreat centers, like the design, the aesthetic. And I thought, I really want to create a retreat center. So that was the first reason we were going to find a place where we could start this. My husband has a whole story. It was on another podcast you'll have to do it with him. What happened for him was part of why we came to this place. So we just basically wanted to start. And buying a place in Toronto was so difficult. And we just thought we were starting our life together. Part of his story is he lost both of his parents very close after each other, one after the other. So we had this moment of, what are we going to do? How are we going to start our lives? His parents always wanted to move to the county, like retire in the county. And so we thought, let's go. We had Adam here. Then my friend was working at the Drake. We had a little community of people here already that we could feel comfortable to move somewhere new. And we wanted to start a life of our own. And so
that's a beautiful story, moving to the county. And it's so nice. Like, we keep talking about this idea of community and having people around you. And also you're really building a community here too, because there's so many people that come to your movement classes and who are part of the process.
Yeah.
I will confess, one of my fears of doing the process is
Tell me about them.
Yeah, I will share. Is about being.
Because I'm sure this is common for everyone. You know?
It's about being in a small community and being so vulnerable in a small community where you're gonna, like, I'm like, Leah, these are my deepest, darkest fears, and then seeing Leah the next day in the supermarket and being like,
yeah. That's
okay. I know all your deep.
That's a really, really wonderful thing to speak to, actually.
Absolutely.
So, of course, we spend a lot of time building safety in the container. it's of utmost importance. We co-create that, right? So there are commitments that we make together, and those commitments are not only collected, written down, they're revisited every single session. This is what I'm committing to. So we hold that. That's the safety of our container really sacredly. And a lot of this work is relational, which will always include boundaries and making sure that we are acting in accordance to the environment that we're in, right? So we talk a lot about right time, right space, and right support. So when we're going to be vulnerable with other people, we need those three elements. So right time being there is actual time for it, right space, these three things all need to check out. Right space, is this the right environment? And then right support, is this somebody that is meant to hold this or has the capacity to hold this for me with me? So there's a lot of relational work that's happening, right? And the other thing is we're not, again, because it's somatic work, we're not sitting there hashing out our stories. A lot of that work you're doing on your own.
Right.
And we do examples of practice of how you work with. And then this is why you have private sessions with me. So you have 2 private sessions with me. And the first session, I'm going to take in all that information and I'm holding that information. You do not have to share any of that information because we're mostly focused on the felt sense. And so often in a somatic process, the story is like it's there, but it's all about how that story is living inside of you now. And everyone can relate to that. So when we tease out the theme, that's what we're focused on is the theme. And how is this showing up in you now? And that's something that everybody relates to. At the end of the day, we're more similar than we are different. We think, oh, this is about me. And the moment we get vulnerable with other people in a safe container, you realize, oh, we're all the same.
Yeah.
You know,
We all
have the
have a
same
path.
feel. So it's like, we all want to feel worthy. We all want to feel belonging. It comes down to a handful of the same things. So thank you for bringing that because it's really important to share with people because you're not alone in that. And as I shared in my story, it's like I was right there with you. But again, it's so worth it. The changes that I have experienced from the beginning of that time to now and continue to experience, I don't know. I just don't know who I would be. I mean, I'm still me, but I don't know who I would be or where I would be or what I would feel like without the tools and practices that I have and continue to engage with and work and grow.
I was just going to ask one more question on that. But do you feel yourself that you go through a transformative experience when you're holding space for the process? Like as you're going through and teaching now, do you still find that there's kind of nuggets that you are learning along the way through other people?
Certainly. The program has gone through an evolution of its own and my own evolution within it too. As I'm teaching or encountering different experiences that other people are bringing, we're all unique and the same, but depends on how we're presenting in the moment. It always gives me a different opportunity to find what might work for this person will be very different than what might work for another person. And so I'm always having to be creative. I continue to learn all the time. I do continue learning courses online or with teachers that I admire, and I see my therapist, and through those experiences I get to learn and grow personally and then professionally as well. So yes, I learn through everyone that I work with. I'm always learning, and that's why I love what I do so much because I'm growing with them, and it's so special.
Do you feel, or are you able to sort of describe any points that felt like a bit of a struggle or hurdles that you had to work through? And what kept you going through those?
Oh my goodness, running a business in general is just so difficult. Absolutely. You know, it's so amazing and so difficult, especially as a sole proprietor in a small town, changing from having following, as they call it, or flourishing the business in Toronto to a whole new environment. I had the pandemic on my side, I will say, because everybody had to go online. So it didn't matter where I was for those first transitional years, which was a blessing within a curse. It's still difficult to get enough people in seats sometimes for a program. It's an amazing program. We couldn't have better feedback about the program. The experience is incredible. And sometimes it's really hard to get people signed up and registered, whether it's fear or timing or whatever it might be. This day and age, gathering anybody together, as you know, for a specific time is so difficult. What else? I mean, I could go on and on. It's just like, thank God I have an assistant, and I don't like to call her my assistant because she's much more than that. Caitlin, who helps me run my business. So I always say, like, doing it alone is really, really hard. So I'm really grateful for her and to have somebody to be working alongside with to bring everything.
How have you found the community here to be? I think a lot of people that we've spoken to have mentioned that the county there's both really a lot of beautiful things about working here and starting a business here, and then there's some difficulties as well. Did you experience that?
I think the seasonal aspect of it, sure. I mean, for me, it kind of works in opposition. People want to do health and wellness stuff in the winter and not in the summer because everyone's feeling good in the summer. Outside.
Living their best lives.
As soon as these more quieter, slower months come about, we go inward, and then we're left to really notice what's going on because we have less distractions and activity. So I tend to be busier when everybody else is quieter, and so that's an interesting contrast. But I think for me, it's about consistency. If you trust what you're doing and you stay consistent and you're really authentically behind it and you stay steady and you keep growing your practice and your offering. Now it could change, but I think the more you stay on track, the easier it is for people to find you. It just takes time. It really does take time. So does healing. Healing takes time. Nervous system healing takes time. It's not a fast fix, but it's sustainable, and it's nothing that costs you anything. Whereas sometimes when we do things that are quick fixes, they come with a cost, and they tend to crash out.
How do you re-energize yourself? You do so much for everyone around you. How do you re-energize yourself?
So I try to eat healthy, for sure, nourishing meals. Definitely have a meditation practice and movement. Of course, teaching movement is my way to keep moving because I'm designing classes and then I'm making sure I do that. If I'm supporting other people, my nervous system needs to be regulated, and I have to have capacity to hold whatever they're going through, and many of those a day. It's really important. And I always think that I do this so that I have to do that, because I know that it's so easy not to do that. So I chose a career that's just like, well, you have to do it. That's how I'm going to make sure that I stay healthy. And
Teaching other people about being healthy.
There you go. That's what I do.
I also feel like this house, I would fall asleep. Well, I mean, I fall asleep at 8 o'clock every night anyways with my daughter, but it's so peaceful. Like, it's just, I feel like it's being, you're in, like, you've made, like, a cozy, really safe, beautiful space.
Yeah, we're really grateful for our home. We really care about the energy of our space, the energy that we put out there. That's so important. And that brings me back to the point of our conversation, brings me back to taking care of ourselves, because people sometimes think it's selfish, and that's just another form of resistance. But taking care of ourselves is not just for ourselves. The fact that you're feeling this in my house is because of the care that we put into the environment. And people feel your vibration and your energy and what it's like to be with you. And that either feels safe and leans them in, or the opposite. And it just doesn't, they don't feel welcome. They don't feel like there's presence or attunement. I mean, of course, we can be like that with everybody all the time, but the work that we do for ourselves is not for ourselves only. It's for ourselves. It's for our relationships. And I always say it's for our environment and the world. So it's really important to be healthy and focus on your own health and well-being. Yeah, it's so important for other people. And that's, again, in the group program, it's that sort of thing where I say, bring your questions and your concerns and your fears within reason for how comfortable you are to share, because someone else in the room is thinking, feeling, questioning the exact same thing. And so they'll be so grateful that you said it here, because they'll go, what's the answer to that question? Too vulnerable to ask. Thank you. It's very brave to be able to name what our resistances are all about. Hopefully the safe environment, and you knowing, Lisa, knowing that I'm doing similar work, hopefully help you feel real safer.
Totally. And I think that one thing that's been consistent in all the interviews that we've conducted has been this idea of doing things even if you're scared. And that's been really unifying and beautiful to hear. It's been all women today. Hearing all these women say, I'm still scared. I'm a bit scared. And to feel not alone in that is very Beautiful. Okay, we always ask everyone to shout out a couple of local businesses that you love and you just feel
Passionate about. Oh my gosh, I feel like all of Main Street Glencoe. Citizen Francis, obviously, being like our main community hub. The Jade's Hair Salon, Odette, Britt's Jewelry Shop, Olivia's 27. You in the summer being
we're only
there.
seasonal.
Yeah, but we bring our family to the Slickers. That's what their favorite thing to do is walk down the street. Coquito, Keith, beautiful shops on the street, Shelley's shops. I just feel like I could go on and on, but I feel so fortunate to be in a community of all of these amazing businesses, business owners, entrepreneurs, healers. It's just, they're everywhere.
We so appreciate you coming and making time to be on our podcast. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Just getting this work out in the world is so important to me. It feels like I'm passing on work from my teachers. So I really appreciate any opportunity I have to put it out there, and hopefully it helps somebody along the way.
I feel like, and we've said this too, like if we can even just help one other person, like not feel alone or feel like empowered to take on something that they were scared to do before.
Yes, we've done what we
Wanted to do.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.